Nora said. At that time I had managed to get a transfer quota and was just about to leave the administrative department. Then you suddenly went to the president's office and the administrative department refused to let me go no matter what. How do you think I felt? Moreover, you left without any sign and went straight from an edge department to a core position. Anyone would think you had a background. Lucas became even more helpless. Now you should have cleared up your misunderstanding of me, right? Nora nodded. When I got to the president's office and saw that you were just a tool, I felt relieved. He picked up the yogurt beside him, raised the yogurt cup and said to Nora, since that's the case, let's bury the hatchet. Nora flatly refused. No. Lucas wondered. The misunderstanding is cleared up. Do you still hate me? Nora said, of course. Lucas couldn't understand. It didn't make sense. The two of them didn't have any grudges. Nora said, because of your face. Good. Looking people usually get promoted faster. Lucas, so it's my fault? Nora lowered her head to eat. It's not your fault. I just feel unbalanced when I think about it. Lucas was completely speechless. As long as you're happy. Leo and Henry returned to the company. Henry had held it in all the way and finally complained to Leo in the parking lot. What a jerk that Carter is. How dare he ask us for this and that? Henry was always annoyed when he saw Carter. He even still has his eye on Secretary Lucas. Fortunately, you were well prepared and didn't let Secretary Lucas go with us. During the negotiation, Carter mentioned Lucas to Leo. Why didn't you bring your handsome male secretary? He leered as he spoke. What are you hiding him for? Good things should be shared. Leo overturned the table on the spot. If it weren't for the fact that fighting was a crime, the two groups would have almost started a fight. At this time, hearing what Henry said, Leo turned pale with anger and looked unhappy. Henry said angrily, Mr. Leo, I think we should take action right away. If we don't, some people will get too arrogant. Leo glanced at him. Henry quickly covered his mouth and said, I shouldn't have said that here. The two of them took the president's private elevator upstairs. In the elevator, Henry turned his head and said, since we're not talking about work, let's talk about something else. With a gossiping look on his face, he asked, how are you getting along with that junior you mentioned last time? Henry had an intuition that the relationship between Leo and that junior should have improved. Otherwise, why had Leo been so amiable these days, and his attitude towards others had obviously softened? Leo frowned and said, what do you mean by how are you getting along? The verb get along was thought-provoking. Henry shrugged and said, just get the gist. Anyway, that's what I mean. Leo gave him a sidelong glance and said, not bad. He really had a good time with Lucas that day. The atmosphere was harmonious and memorable. Henry stroked his chin and said complacently, see, you really needed my guidance. Leo was too lazy to pay attention to him. Henry never missed any opportunity to give bad advice, and he was the kind of person who would talk even more if you ignored him. He said, Mr. Leo, you have to keep it up. Kids have short memories. They can be your friends today and forget about you tomorrow. Leo turned his head after hearing what he said. Seeing that the president's attention was drawn, Henry continued, you have to bribe him. He's just a kid. Buy him some small gadgets and he'll be more devoted to you. Leo asked, what should I buy? Henry said, that's a problem. Don't make your own decisions. What we old guys like, kids may not like. You should directly ask him what he wants or just give him money and let him buy it himself. Leo thought it sounded unreliable and said, I don't believe your nonsense. Henry patted his chest and promised, trust me, it's definitely like this. You've seen how happy kids are when they get lucky money during the spring festival. But when you buy them gifts, they're just so. Leo kept silent. Anyway, one dared to talk and the other dared to listen. Soon, the elevator arrived. The two arrived at the office. When Lucas saw them coming back, he stood up from his seat and greeted them with a smile. Mr. Leo, Assistant Henry, you've had a hard time. Leo nodded and said to him, come to my office after work. Henry thought the president was going to exploit Lucas again and quickly said, take it easy, Mr. Leo. Don't exhaust Secretary Lucas. Leo always felt that Henry had been speaking very strangely recently. He turned his head and said coldly, it's none of your business. Go to your own work. Henry pouted and went into his own office. Leo turned back to look at Lucas and then walked in too. When it was time to get off work, Lucas knocked on the president's door and reported to the president's office. When Leo saw him come in, he didn't beat around the bush and directly asked, what do you want? Lucas didn't know why the president would ask this and cautiously asked, in what aspect? Leo glanced at the time and said, it's already off work time. Just say whatever you want. It doesn't matter. Lucas understood that it was again a question related to the side business. He thought for a while and confessed, there are so many things. I want a large flat in the city center, a villa by the lake, and a Ferrari. A Rolls-Royce would be even better. Maybe a Lamborghini too. It'd be best to have a garage to specifically collect limited edition luxury cars. Truly the person who asked for a price of 100 million. Leo said irritably, working in a new energy company and not buying electric cars. Say something more realistic. Although he could afford it, the appetite was too big. Only then did Lucas realize something and said, "Why do you ask this, Mr. Leo?" Leo found it so troublesome just to inquire about a gift and began to think that what Henry said was right. It was better to just give money than to keep asking. He simply stopped asking, took out a card from the drawer, pushed it in front of Lucas and said, "Buy whatever you want with it." Lucas was greatly shocked and said, "What does this mean, Mr. Leo?" Leo looked at him strangely and said, "It doesn't mean anything. I just want to buy you something." Sitting in the office chair, he explained, "It's better for you to have some gifts from me around. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense." Lucas understood that this was also a means to create a romantic couple atmosphere. But there were simply too many flaws in what the president said. Who asks others what they want before giving them a gift? And who just gives a card and tells the person to go buy things on their own? This is just too perfunctory. Even if it's just a pretend relationship, there should at least be some sense of ritual. Lucas couldn't complain about the president's straight man behavior to his face. Looking at the obviously high-end black card, he showed his reluctance. Leo saw that the young secretary was hanging his head, his lips losing their curve and standing there quietly. He knew that he was in a bad mood again. Leo was a bit confused. Didn't people say that they'd be happy if given money directly? Why did Lucas look so listless? Leo said, "Just say what you want to say." Then, as if realizing he was being too harsh, he cleared his throat and said, "Just put forward any opinions you have. I'll take them into consideration." Only then did Lucas say, "If you just give me the card and I use it to buy things for myself, it always feels like a sugar daddy relationship." Leo paused. Lucas said, "We're a secret couple, but you're using money on me. It's starting to seem like workplace sexual harassment." As Lucas was speaking, he himself became confused. It's true that the boundaries are very blurred. The initial setup wasn't well thought out and it always goes off script when we act. Leo also realized that the conversation was getting more and more absurd. He directly took the card back and said, "I didn't think it through. I'll handle this." When Lucas saw the black card disappear, he felt a little bit regretful. Being high-minded really comes at a price. Goodbye, Lamborghini. Goodbye, Ferrari. After saying what he wanted to say, Lucas said, "Mr. Leo, if there's nothing else, I'll leave first." Instead of agreeing or disagreeing, Leo said, "It's not sexual harassment." Lucas looked up. Leo stared at him and asked in return, "Would someone who's using sexual harassment cook for you?" Lucas was stunned for a moment and then smiled shyly, his eyes curving into crescents. Every time he thought the president was extremely straight-laced, the situation would reverse. Leo always managed to surprise him, making it impossible for him to genuinely complain, and his heart would become extremely soft. He smiled gently and said, "Mr. Leo, thank you for setting the direction for our script." He winked playfully. "If Ms. Elena offers me 100 million in the future, I'll have the confidence to decline." Lucas smiled brightly. "I'll tell her that I'm with you not for the money, but because of true love. If it were just a hidden rule, I would have taken the money and run. Only true love would make me stay." Leo looked at his smile and listened to him speaking. He knew he was just reciting lines, but his heart rate skipped a beat because of this false statement. Leo lowered his head to cover up and said to Lucas, "You did a great job. Go back and rest early." Actually, Lucas thought the president didn't need to act so convincingly. Anyway, no one would come to them and no one was watching them act. As long as Shirexin and Shirwei are cooperating, the chairman turns a blind eye and doesn't care about their affairs. As for Ms. Elena, maybe she is reluctant to part with 100 million, so she hasn't shown up. Lucas was happy to be at ease. However, he felt a bit ashamed for getting double pay so easily. So he became even more obedient to Leo and did whatever the president said. One day, Lucas followed Leo to a business banquet and brought Nora along. This dinner was quite mild and people toasted politely. At first, Nora was a bit nervous, thinking that the president brought the female assistant to accompany guests in drinking. As a result, she found she had overthought it. Lucas said to her, "Mr. Leo wants you to get some experience. There won't be any problems. If it's a fierce dinner where people fight over drinks, he'll arrange someone else. Moreover, generally speaking, it's okay. We are Mr. Leo's people. If someone wants to mess with us, it's disrespecting him. Many bosses are very polite to us." Nora didn't appreciate it and looked at him. "Don't lecture me. All right, my good intentions are taken as malicious ones." This dinner was held in a traditional Chinese restaurant. Yaoi booked the largest private room. Lucas and Nora stood in the corridor and took the opportunity to talk. They didn't know that this scene was seen by others. That person saw Lucas and Nora, then hurried back to another private room and reported to Carter, who was having dinner inside. "Mr. Carter, I just saw that young secretary from Yaoi in the corridor. It seems that Mr. Leo might also be nearby." Carter raised his eyebrows. He turned to the business partner who was having dinner with him and said, "There's an acquaintance nearby. I'll go and meet him." Carter stood up and walked out of the private room. Instead of going directly to Leo, he said to his subordinate beside him, "I'm tired of seeing Leo's stinky face. It's boring." However, his young secretary can be invited to have a seat. Carter couldn't out-argue Leo and was frequently humiliated by him. He also couldn't get money from Leo, so he was holding a grudge and couldn't wait to see Leo suffer. Since he couldn't directly take action against Leo, it was also a good idea to start with the people around him. That young male secretary was really good looking. It was so sneaky of Leo to keep such a person by his side for his own enjoyment. Carter motioned his subordinate to come closer and whispered instructions into his ear. The subordinate nodded and said, "I understand. Don't worry, Mr. Carter." Then he left with several people. Carter snorted. He touched his collar with his fingers and the wrinkles on his face spread like flowers. He looked extremely smug. Here, Leo intended to train Nora and asked her to handle the reception affairs. Moreover, he told Lucas to take good care of his female colleague. When going to add dishes, Lucas followed Nora and said sourly, "It's so nice. You still have me to help you now. When I first came to Mr. Leo's side, no one taught me at all. I suffered a lot before barely meeting Mr. Leo's requirements." Nora turned around expressionlessly and said, "It's because you're too stupid." She sized up Lucas. "Why are you talking so much today?" Lucas said, "Because I'm as unbalanced as you." When he first came to the president's office, Leo tortured him in various ways. Now Lucas understood that Leo was forcing him to grow up, but the process of growth was really unbearable. In contrast, Leo's temper had improved a lot and his attitude towards his subordinates had become much milder. Nora even had an experienced colleague like him to protect her. She had never suffered those hardships. She was really lucky. Nora looked at him for a while, then turned her head and continued to communicate with the restaurant manager. Lucas watched her handle the problem, gave her some tips from time to time, and stood aside for the rest of the time. After the communication was over, the two were about to return to the private room. When they were halfway there, suddenly a waiter chased after them and called them to stop, saying, "Mr. Lucas, Ms. Nora, there was an error in our restaurant's system and all the data from just now wasn't entered. We need you to come over again so that we can manually record and settle the bill." Neither Lucas nor Nora expected such a thing to happen. Nora frowned and said, "How could this be? Don't you have any emergency plans?" "I'm very sorry, Ms. Nora. We've caused you trouble," the man said politely. Lucas said, "It's an unexpected situation. We can't blame others. They're just following instructions. There's no need for us to make things difficult for each other as we're all working people." He said to Nora, "Well, I'll handle this problem. You go back to the private room and stay with Mr. Leo. There must be someone by his side." As soon as he said this, the waiter beside him secretly showed a look of joy. As long as Lucas followed him, he was confident to bring the person to Mr. Carter. Who would have thought that Nora would say, "Let me go instead. You go back to the private room." Nora thought very simply. Mr. Leo had told her to do a good job in reception. Now that there was a mistake in the restaurant, she naturally had to go and coordinate. This was her responsibility and she couldn't let Lucas do it for her. Lucas thought for a while and agreed, "All right then." The waiter didn't expect the two of them to switch places. He was stunned for a moment and quickly presented the prepared excuse, "Only one person is needed. Mr. Lucas is familiar with our place. How about Mr. Lucas going with me instead?" Nora glared at him and said, "What, don't you trust my working ability?" The waiter stammered. Lucas felt something was strange, but he couldn't tell exactly what. He asked, "Nora, can you handle it alone? Pay attention to safety." Nora was also puzzled. "Why can't I? What's unsafe here?" Lucas thought it made sense. Such a simple thing, Nora would surely handle it quickly. There was nothing to worry about. Moreover, this restaurant was a high-end one. The people who came here were either rich or noble, and the security measures were well done. The environment was very safe. So they made such an arrangement. Lucas returned to the private room and Nora went with the waiter to recalculate the bill. The waiter secretly cursed in his heart, but when he saw Nora, a female assistant with a good appearance, he thought it didn't matter whether it was a man or a woman. He just needed to get one back first. So he led Nora into the elevator and went downstairs again. As Lucas walked in the corridor, for some reason he always had a sense of discord. Having been with the president, he had encountered many situations and knew that sometimes he had to trust his intuition. Just then, another waiter was coming towards him. Lucas stopped her and asked, "Is your system broken?" The female waiter showed a surprised expression. "I haven't heard about it. Please wait a moment. I'll ask about it." Lucas didn't need to wait for her to ask. He knew something was wrong. He quickly turned around and ran in the direction where Nora had left, taking out his phone while running. Maybe it was just a coincidence, Lucas thought to himself, but his instinct drove him to go back and look for Nora. He took out his phone and didn't contact Leo. The president was still discussing business in the private room. Don't alarm him before it was confirmed. Lucas called the bodyguards brought by Leo. Lucas asked the bodyguards to send someone down quickly. There might be something wrong here. He ran back at the fastest speed, but Nora had disappeared. Lucas watched the elevator numbers going down and realized they were still in the building. He quickly went downstairs through the emergency exit beside. While going downstairs, Lucas called the restaurant manager. Sure enough, there was no malfunction in the restaurant's system. He asked the manager to order the security guards not to let anyone leave the restaurant. But the manager just kept asking what had happened. Lucas could only say that someone was in trouble. The manager kept asking, "Who is in trouble? What's the matter? Did it happen here?" Lucas cursed under his breath. He didn't have time to explain and hung up the phone directly. Right now, he was racing against time and couldn't waste a single moment. If Nora was really taken away, Lucas didn't dare to imagine what would happen. Maybe it would turn out to be just a false alarm in the end, but Lucas didn't dare to take the risk. Finally, Lucas caught up with Nora at the entrance of the underground parking lot. When Lucas saw her situation, his blood almost froze. Nora was being carried by several men towards an SUV. She seemed to have lost consciousness. Her body was limp, her feet were hanging weakly on the ground and being dragged, and her leather shoes were hanging on her toes, about to fall off. In order to avoid attracting attention, those men put a coat over Nora's head and dragged her away, making it look like they were dragging a drunk person. Lucas really wanted to rush up to save Nora, but his reason told him that going up directly would only mean one more person getting He couldn't fight against those men. Lucas hid behind the wall, took pictures of Nora and the license plate number of the car, and quickly sent a message to the bodyguards asking them to come to the parking lot quickly. Seeing that Nora was about to be taken into the SUV, he gritted his teeth and his mind was racing. Lucas looked around. He found that electric bikes could be parked in this underground garage and immediately had an idea. Lucas went around to one side and quickly pushed down an electric bike from behind. Those electric bikes were parked quite densely in an area. Once one fell, several others fell one after another like dominoes, and finally a whole bunch of them lay flat with a clatter. Ear-piercing alarm sounds rang out one after another. The anti-theft system of electric bikes that would alarm as soon as they were touched was really something. The sharp sounds made people extremely annoyed, not to mention so many bikes started screaming at the same time. Suddenly, the entire garage was engulfed in a hellish frenzy of alarm sounds. Those men were startled and turned their heads to find the source of the sound. It took them a while to react. They glanced at each other, quickened their pace, and carried Nora towards the car. But the garage attendant was alerted. He walked in from the outside and loudly asked, "What's going on?" Lucas finally breathed a sigh of relief at this time. As long as he could stall for time and ensure that the car didn't leave here, the other things should be okay. Leo's bodyguards would arrive soon and Nora would be saved. He didn't believe that in broad daylight and in a society ruled by law, someone would dare to kidnap someone openly. Lucas had just started thinking about whether to go out and cooperate with the attendant to stop the car when he noticed something suddenly appear in front of him. Before he could react, his mouth and nose were covered by that thing. He suddenly inhaled a pungent gas, and a severe sense of dizziness overwhelmed his mind. His vision went black, and he lost consciousness. Leo was in the private dining room of the restaurant, patiently having a meal with his business partners. His two assistants hadn't come back for a long time. It was just to add a few dishes. Why did it take so long? Today's dinner was relatively relaxed. The contract had been finalized in advance, and there was no need to negotiate at the dinner table. Leo only brought Lucas, Nora, and a few bodyguards today. It was a simple outing. Leo waited for a while and was about to call the bodyguards in and ask them to see what Lucas and Nora were doing. Just then, the door of the private room opened and Carter appeared at the door. Leo frowned. Bad luck. Carter glanced at the people in the private room and grinned at Leo. Nephew, I heard you were also having dinner here, so I rushed over right away. Leo mentally added this restaurant to his blacklist and said expressionlessly, what a coincidence. Some of the people at the table knew Carter while others didn't. They turned to ask Leo who this person was. Leo didn't say a word, but Carter introduced himself voluntarily. I'm Carter from back.And and blromance. As soon as he mentioned his name, everyone present recognized him. No matter what they thought of him in their hearts, people in the business world were always good at putting on a good front. Several people stood up and invited him to stay for dinner. Carter laughed heartily and said, I still have guests over there, so I won't stay. He walked up to Leo and said, I mainly came to see my great-nephew. Leo didn't give him any face at all and said, why do you have to hound me? Even if you've tracked me down to the place where I'm having a meal, I won't let you claim this cheap family relationship. Such words hardly ever appear at a dinner party. By saying this in public, Leo was essentially falling out with Carter and announcing to everyone that there was bad blood between Yaoi and blcommunity. The others at the dinner table exchanged glances secretly and didn't try to persuade Carter to stay any longer. They remained calm and waited to see how things would develop. Who would have thought that Carter was very magnanimous today and said, you're the younger generation. I won't argue with you. Seeing the wine on the table, he poured himself a glass and said to several CEOs, let's make friends. Maybe we'll cooperate next time. After all, our blcommunity is also venturing into the new energy field and has advanced charging technology. Everyone at the table had heard about the speed car incident. Moreover, one should not refuse a smiling offer. Since Carter offered a toast, several CEOs also picked up their glasses. Leo stood up too, poured himself a glass of wine, held it in his hand, looked at everyone present and said, sorry to trouble you all. I'll apologize on behalf of my father's cheap younger brother. As soon as he finished speaking, before Carter could say a word, he downed the whole glass of wine in one gulp. Since Leo had brought up Alexander, the others had no choice but to drink as well. Leo's words were full of belittlement of Carter, constantly reminding him that the back.And group belonged to the Qin family and he was not allowed to cause trouble. It made Carter grind his teeth in anger. At this moment, something unexpected happened. The door of the private room opened again. Leo's bodyguard rushed in. Without asking anyone's permission, he walked hurriedly to Leo's side and whispered something in his ear. Leo's face changed drastically. He frowned and said to the people in the private room, I'm very sorry. I have some urgent matters to deal with suddenly and have to leave. I owe you all a meal. I'll definitely make it up next time. After saying that, he left the private room without looking back. While he was leaving, Carter was still shouting there, what on earth is going on, great nephew? Why are you in such a hurry? Do you need your uncle's help? Leo ignored him. After Leo left, Carter couldn't stop laughing. He said to the others, my nephew is always so erratic. Please don't mind. Enjoy your meal. I'll take my leave too. Then he also left following Leo, leaving the people in the private room looking at each other in bewilderment. Carter strolled out through the back door of the restaurant. At this time, there was chaos in the underground parking lot near the restaurant. Several men were trying to take a woman away. When the garage attendant noticed, those men left the woman behind in a hurry and drove through the barrier and fled. Leo looked at the almost unconscious Nora and his anger flared up. Nora had obviously inhaled an excessive amount of anesthetic gas. Although she hadn't completely lost consciousness, she was unaware of what was happening around her and could only be manhandled. 2 bodyguards supported her. Leo roared, call the police. Then he asked, where's Lucas? The bodyguard said, Secretary Lucas informed us to come here to rescue Assistant Joseph. But when we arrived, we just happened to see the garage attendant entangled with those people and Assistant Joseph was lying on one side. When those people saw us coming, they immediately drove away. So where's Lucas? Leo didn't want to hear this nonsense. He just wanted to know where the person was. The bodyguards could only reply, we haven't found him yet. Leo's anger reached its peak, mixed with a strong sense of unease. He closed his eyes and tried to regain his composure. He lowered his voice and said menacingly, find the person for me. At the same time, Carter got into the car humming a song and told the driver to head for the destination. His subordinate had just reported that they had got the person. Carter was very satisfied. He deliberately went to Leo's private room to throw out a red herring. In the words of young people, it was to create an alibi. It would take Leo some time to suspect him. By the time Leo realized it, it would be too late. It would be enough time for him to have his way with that handsome male secretary several times. Carter used to be a gangster in his early years. He was picked up by Alexander and did many shady things. Later, as the crackdown became stricter and Alexander's business got on the right track, Carter reformed himself, but he still despised the law deep down. Moreover, he had all sorts of tricks up his sleeve. He hadn't had a chance to use them recently. Using them on Lucas and Leo today made him extremely excited. Carter sat in the car and couldn't help touching his mouth. I have to say, Leo really knows how to have fun having a male secretary by his side. He had also played with handsome boys before, but none of them seemed as appealing as Leo's secretary. In Carter's mind, whether it was subordinates or minions, they were no different from objects. Once he was done with them, he could just replace them if they were ruined. He didn't think Leo could do anything to him for ruining a secretary. Carter began to be impatient and urged the driver to drive faster so that he could see Lucas earlier. When Lucas woke up, his head was still dizzy. He felt like he was in the clouds, all dizzy and disoriented, as if the next step he took would be into thin air. He closed his eyes and adjusted for a while before slowly opening them. This is a strange place. It looks like a hotel room. Lucas is lying on the bed. His hands and feet are free, but his whole body is weak and he can't exert any strength at all. He knows that he inhaled the anesthetic gas and those drugs are still taking effect in his body. There's no one else in the room. Only a floor lamp is on, emitting a dim yellow light. Lucas tries hard to twist his neck, raises his eyes, and looks towards the window. It's completely dark outside. He doesn't know what time it is now. He reaches out his hand with difficulty to feel his body and finds that all his mobile phones are gone. Lucas takes a breath and thinks about his current situation. The people who kidnapped him should be the same ones who kidnapped Nora. He doesn't know if Nora is safe. Lucas carefully ponders what happened before and thinks that those people might be after him. At that time, the fake waiter asked him to go downstairs with him. It was Nora who insisted on going, and then the man gave up, which shows that their initial target was him. Since he is already in their hands, those people might let Nora go. Lucas scans the room by the dim yellow light and confirms again that there are no other victims. He breathes a sigh of relief. Then he starts to wonder why these people want to kidnap him. He never makes enemies with others on weekdays, except for the scumbag and the mistress. Lucas doesn't think Benjamin and Thomas have the ability to organize people to kidnap him. Besides, there has been no news of them for a long time. It can't be them. Then it can only be a problem on Leo's side. Someone wants to deal with Leo, so they kidnapped him. Has their underground lover relationship been exposed? Does someone want to use him to blackmail the president? Lucas never expected that he would encounter a movie-like plot. He is extremely nervous. He can't figure out how his relationship with the president was exposed. Did the chairman and the others tell the story? It doesn't seem like something the people of the Chin family would do. He also can't figure out who the people who kidnapped him are. There's no business without enemies, but it's unlikely for them to kidnap the other party's secretary. The more Lucas thinks about it, the more splitting his headache becomes. He speeds up his breathing, trying to speed up metabolism and replace the anesthetic in his blood with fresh oxygen. Those things are not important. The most important thing now is how to escape. When Lucas was trying hard to think, the door of the room suddenly opened. Lucas quickly closed his eyes and pretended to be asleep. Two people appeared at the door. They didn't come in but just looked at him from afar, seemingly confirming his state. The two people found that Lucas was still asleep and started talking. Mr. Carter will be here soon. What if he doesn't wake up? Well, you don't understand. It's more interesting to wake him up forcefully. Lucas felt a sinking feeling in his heart. It was actually Carter. When did Carter become so smart? He actually discovered the relationship between him and Leo. After the two people said a few words, they closed the door again. Lucas thought of Carter's lewd face and his heart tightened. He tried to move his fingers and silently lifted his legs. His body still had no strength and it was very difficult for him to even get out of bed. But he had to think of a way and couldn't just wait for death. Lucas closed his eyes to conserve his energy and slowly mobilized his muscles. When he was practicing dance before, he had done strength training and knew how to use the right parts of his body to exert force. Those dance moves that look light and elegant actually rely on muscle control and strength. It's very difficult to dance beautifully without strength. After a while, Lucas could move. He held his breath and got up from the bed. He gently got out of bed and his bare feet stepped on the carpet. Lucas' limbs were very weak, but he controlled himself well and didn't make any sound. He looked around to find a way out. There was nothing here but furniture. Maybe he could find something to send a message outside, but what's the use? By the time the police arrived, he would be dead. He couldn't rush out of the door either. There must be someone guarding it. Going out would mean death. Lucas was panicking inside. If Carter touched him, he might as well just die. It wasn't that he had any ideas about chastity. It was just that the thought of Carter's lewd and overbearing face made him want to vomit. He couldn't stand being treated like that by such a person. He finally understood Leo's cleanliness fetish. Just thinking about being touched by someone he hated was unbearable. Lucas calmed his mind and forced himself to stay calm. He sized up the surroundings and looked for a breakthrough again. Finally, his gaze fell on that window. Leo's car was speeding on the city roads at night. The car was going very fast, but even so, it couldn't match the urgency in Leo's heart. He checked the surveillance footage of the parking lot. He saw Lucas holding those people back in time to save Nora and then saw Lucas being drugged and taken away by another group of people. A raging fire of anger engulfed him. Then came deep heartache and fear. He couldn't get through on the phone. He had already called the police, but it would take time to track the location. Just thinking that his little secretary might be suffering now was like being stabbed in the heart with a knife, bleeding profusely and in extreme pain. He knew that feeling. The oppressive darkness and endless torture were enough to drive a person crazy. It was like a drowning person. Every time he tried to float up from the dark and cold seabed, a ruthless hand would press his head down and keep pushing him deeper, never able to get air or light. He couldn't let Lucas suffer that kind of pain either. Lucas didn't choose to run away at the critical moment. Instead, he did his best to save Nora. He is different from those cold-hearted people. He deserves to be treated more gently. Leo mobilized all the forces he could gather. In this vast metropolis, he tried every means to find his little secretary. Carter asked his subordinates to arrange Lucas in a club. On the surface, this club is not his property, but he's secretly invested in it. Everyone here listens to him. It's the best place to hide someone. Carter arrived at the club and was led upstairs by his subordinates. That kid is still unconscious. Do we need to wake him up? A subordinate asked for instructions. Carter waved his hand and said there are advantages to him being asleep. The subordinate understood what he meant. They reached the door of the room. The subordinate opened the door for Carter. Carter walked in proudly, thinking that Leo had hidden this secretary from him, but in the end, he still got his hands on him. When Leo found out that he had had fun with this little secretary, he would probably be furious. The room was dimly lit with only a floor lamp providing light. Carter looked around but didn't see anyone. Carter thought he was seeing things. He asked his subordinate to turn on the ceiling light. When the light came on, it was still empty. There were only traces on the bed indicating that someone had slept there. Carter got angry for no reason and asked fiercely, "Where's the person?" The subordinate was also stunned. He was still here just now. Carter angrily slapped his subordinate and said, "Go and find him." Only then did the subordinate quickly call in the others to search for Lucas together. Unfortunately, the club has good privacy protection. There are no monitors in the rooms and there are always people guarding the corridors, but no one saw Lucas come out. Carter strode angrily to the window of the room, leaned out and looked outside. He even looked down at the ground but found no traces. This club has 7 floors and they are on the top floor. If Lucas jumped out of the window, he would either die or be seriously injured. Nothing was missing from the room, so it's impossible that he used the sheets as a rope to escape. Damn it, Carter cursed in his heart. He thought for a while, then looked up and examined the edge of the window, but still found nothing. That young secretary looks gentle and weak, but she actually has quite a few tricks up her sleeve. Carter took out his anger on his subordinates and started shouting abuse. His subordinates kept saying that they had really brought the person here. Now the clubhouse had been sealed off and the person must still be in the building. They would definitely find him. Just then, there was suddenly a loud commotion outside. A group of people rushed out from the elevator and the stairwell surrounding Carter's men. Carter's subordinate walked out of the room and stepped forward to question them. "Who are you? How did you get up here?" No one answered him. Those people just started to act and pressed him to the ground. Seeing this, the other subordinates quickly came to help, but there were too many people who had come up. In an instant, they were subdued. Carter was still in that room. Hearing the commotion outside the door, he stood up and wanted to check the situation. Before he could reach the door was kicked open with a bang. Leo appeared outside the door with a gloomy face and a fierce look in his eyes, like a wolf ready to devour someone. Carter was greatly surprised. "How did you come so quickly?" According to Carter's thinking, Leo had been deceived by him. He should have spent a lot of time investigating the whereabouts of the young secretary. By that time, he would have already had his way with the person. But now not only had the young secretary disappeared, but Leo had also come so quickly. It was almost as if Leo had arrived right after him. How did Leo manage to do that? Leo said nothing. The aura around him was as cold as ice and was like a blizzard sweeping through. He strode in, grabbed Carter by the collar, suppressing the urge to tear Carter to pieces, and asked in a hoarse voice, "Where's he?" The problem was that Carter himself didn't know either. He also didn't answer and swung Leo away with his backhand. Carter had lived a life of danger when he was young, and he still had his He directly started to fight with Leo. Leo could no longer restrain himself. His anger flared up and the angry emotions rushed towards Carter like a tidal wave. Carter realized for the first time that he was old and began to be afraid. He shouted out the names of his subordinates, but it was no use calling anyone. "Where's he?" Leo asked again. This time his voice was even more hoarse. The uncontrollable anger overwhelmed his reason. He still hadn't seen Lucas yet, and his patience was almost exhausted. He grabbed Carter's clothes. The place where his fingers touched the dirty garbage gave off a burning sensation which made him feel both uncomfortable and nauseous. But he endured the discomfort and wanted to drag this man into an abyss of eternal damnation. Carter was scared and finally told the truth. "I don't know. He was gone when I arrived." Without saying a word, Leo twisted Carter's arm, dragged him out of the room, and brought him in front of the policeman who had followed. "The kidnapper is here," Leo said to the policeman. When the policemen arrived, they saw that all the criminals had been subdued. They were slightly startled but quickly accepted the reality. Now that the suspect had been caught, the police officer asked, "What about the victim?" Leo pursed his lips and stared coldly at Carter. Carter didn't expect Leo to be so ruthless and call the police directly. He suddenly realized the seriousness of the situation. Involving the police meant that he couldn't escape going to the police station today. But Carter wasn't too worried. Anyway, he had plenty of ways to exonerate himself later. Carter had always been able to bend and stretch. Otherwise, he wouldn't have achieved his current status. He analyzed the current situation and his top priority was to calm Leo down. He said, "I really don't know. That person escaped. I didn't even see a shadow of him." Leo didn't believe him and was about to beat Carter but was stopped by the police. "That's enough. If you keep hitting, you'll be committing a crime." Leo pursed his lips, told his men to cooperate with the police to search the whole building, and then turned around and went back to that room. Leo walked into the room and felt nauseous when he saw the scene inside. He saw the bed, which clearly showed someone had lain on it. Just thinking about what might have happened to Lucas on that bed made him want to go out and kill Carter. He took a few deep breaths and forced himself not to think about those things. The most important thing now was to confirm Lucas's safety. Leo searched the room but found nothing, just like Carter. He also walked to the only exit, the window, but didn't dare to look down. He was afraid of seeing a pool of blood on the ground. After a while, Leo finally lowered his head. In the deep night, the ground was illuminated by the street lights and was clean, with nothing on it. Leo couldn't tell what he was feeling. There was no bloodstain, but there was also no sign of Lucas. Leo looked around up and down and left and right. He didn't see anything abnormal. Maybe his desire to see Lucas was too strong. Instead of leaving immediately, he stayed by the window. He inexplicably had a feeling that Lucas was not far away. Leo tried to shout, "Lucas!" There was no response in the pitch-black night. Only the night wind blew, bringing a hopeless chill. Leo's heart sank like an ice cellar. "Mr. Leo, is that you?" Leo's mind exploded with a buzz. The tiny voice was like the most charming celestial sound, making Leo go from hell to heaven in an instant. He leaned out of the window in the direction of the voice and replied in a firm tone, "It's me. Where are you?" I'm in the corner of the outer wall." Lucas was clinging tightly to the outer wall of the building, too afraid to look down. At that time, he saw the window inside the room and thought about climbing to the ground through the window. But it was really too high. No matter what he did, it was unrealistic. So he wanted to jump to another room along the windowsill. But he ran out of way when he walked halfway along the wall. For a moment, Lucas was in a dilemma. He didn't want to go back the same way and he was afraid of being seen hanging by the window. Fortunately, the building was not completely square. There was a concave part in the middle. So Lucas turned a corner on the outer wall at a high altitude and hid behind the corner. He moved along the exterior wall decoration line the whole time, using the air conditioning units, the bottoms of balconies, and exhaust windows to hold onto and stabilize his body. He was quite brave when he was solely focused on escaping, but his legs went weak once he stopped moving. He was so scared that he didn't dare to move. He clung to the wall, afraid that a gust of wind would blow him down. Since he was outside and couldn't hear the sounds in the room, Lucas only felt that someone was wandering by the window. Probably they were looking for him, so he dared not make a sound even more. After a while, someone came to the window again. Lucas thought to himself, why don't they give up? If this goes on, he won't be able to hold on much longer. Just when he was in despair, he heard a familiar voice calling his name. At that moment, Lucas wanted to cry. He didn't want to be so vulnerable either, but he was kidnapped, almost bullied, and now hanging on the wall in the wind. What's wrong with being vulnerable for a while? Usually, Leo often used this cold voice to say mean things, but today Lucas thought the president's voice was the most beautiful in the world. He tried to respond and indeed waited for Leo's inquiry. The president really came. Leo is his Superman. I'm too scared to move. I can't get back. Lucas told his situation. Don't move. Leo's voice came again. Lucas obediently stayed in place as instructed. After another moment, Lucas actually saw Leo's figure appear beside him. Leo was wearing a shirt and his tall figure was like a fluttering flag in the night wind, bringing a sense of great security. Leo reached out his hand to Lucas, grab my hand. Looking into Leo's black eyes, Lucas said nervously, Mr. Leo, it's too dangerous. Go back quickly. Leo looked solemn and firmly stretched out his hand, repeating, grab my hand. Trust me. Lucas felt a warm feeling in his heart and his courage swelled. He grabbed Leo's 5 fingers. Leo firmly held Lucas' hand and led him back step by step. Lucas was still a little scared. Leo noticed his state and said, if you fall, I'll fall with you. There's no such way to encourage someone. The two stepped onto the windowsill along the decorative line. Only then did Lucas notice that Leo was holding his hand with one hand and there was a long piece of cloth tied to the other arm which looked like a curtain. The other end of the curtain was tied to the cabinet. Even so, it was still very dangerous. If Lucas fell, it might even break Leo's hand. Sensing his gaze, Leo continued to reassure him, I'm very strong. The president's voice was calm and hoarse. It poured into his ears with the night wind and shocked him from the eardrum to the bottom of his heart. Leo finally got back into the room. He let go of the curtain, turned around directly, and hugged Lucas tightly, lifting him from the window into the room. After such a great ordeal, Lucas felt weak all over. Leaning in Leo's arms, he couldn't move at all and almost knelt down. The two lost their balance at the same time, hugged each other, and fell from the windowsill onto the carpet in the room. Rolling on the carpet, the two didn't separate but just stayed there quietly. Lucas said shyly, sorry, Mr. Leo. I've touched you. I'll get up later. I can't move now. He still remembered the president's cleanliness even at this moment. Leo wrapped one arm around his back and pinched his waist with the other, hugging him even tighter and firmly imprisoning him in his arms. Lucas lost his freedom of movement and his ribs ached. Just as he was about to say something, he unexpectedly found that Leo was trembling slightly. Leo had been so calm and determined when saving him just now, but now he was shaking. Lucas didn't expect Leo to be more excited than himself. He wanted to raise his head to look at Leo's face, but Leo firmly pressed his chin against the top of his head, not allowing him to move. The two were clinging to each other, and their body temperatures were being transferred to each other. Lucas could feel Leo's strong build. It was like soaking in hot water, making him feel warm all over and his skin start to burn. He whispered to comfort him, Mr. Leo, I'm okay. Fortunately, he was okay. Leo thought to himself. If anything happened to Lucas, he might really kill someone. He wouldn't allow Lucas to suffer, especially in this way. He hugged Lucas even tighter, wishing he could blend him into his own flesh and blood to make sure the person in his arms was real. Lucas obediently pressed his forehead against Leo's chest and said, I just feel a bit dizzy in the head. Only then did Leo realize that the anesthetic hadn't completely worn off. Lucas had been on the outer wall of the 7th floor in this state for so long. One slight slip and he could have fallen. Anger returned to Leo's eyes. He stood up, slipped his strong arm under Lucas' knees, picked up his secretary horizontally, and walked out of the room. Lucas was originally worried about Leo's misophobia, but he was really out of strength. When they got outside the room, he saw a bunch of bodyguards filling the entire corridor, and there were also policemen standing beside. And he was being carried by the CEO in a princess carry. He was so ashamed that he forgot everything and thought it would be better to just pass out. Lucas didn't know much about what happened later. After all, he had inhaled the anesthetic and had been highly tense while holding on for so long on the 7-story high outer wall. By now, his nerves were at the end of their tether. And Leo's embrace was so safe and warm. Let people stare if they wanted to. With the mentality of an ostrich, Lucas leaned against Leo's chest and fell into a deep sleep. When Lucas woke up again, he found himself in the hospital. He looked at the plain ceiling, blinked, turned his head, and saw Leo beside his bed. Lucas didn't expect Leo to still be there, staring directly at him. Leo had regained his composure, but his face was a bit serious. When he saw Lucas wake up, he asked softly, "Do you want some water?" Lucas had never heard the CEO speak in such a gentle tone. He said cautiously, "Yes." Only when he opened his mouth did he realize that his voice was so hoarse that he seemed about to lose it. Leo poured a glass of warm water and helped Lucas sit up to let him drink. After Lucas drank the water, he felt much better. He cleared his throat and asked Leo, "Mr. Leo, am I okay?" Leo stuffed a pillow behind his back to let him lean on it comfortably and said, "Theoretically, you're okay. Stay in the hospital for further observation." Lucas tried to feel his body's sensations. There was no discomfort. Instead, he felt refreshed all over after a good sleep. He asked, "Won't I become stupid?" After all, he had inhaled the kind of stuff. Leo glanced at him and said, "Don't worry. Even if you become stupid, I won't fire you." Lucas smiled. The president's sarcasm was reassuring. He remembered something else and quickly asked, "Where's Nora?" Leo replied, "She's okay too. She inhaled a smaller dose than you and is resting in the ward next to yours. She can be discharged from the hospital after the examination shows no problems." Lucas let out a sigh of relief. Leaning on the pillow, his mind was still a bit dull, but his body was very comfortable. Looking relaxed, he said, "You have to approve a sick leave for me." Leo looked at him, reached out his hand, and smoothed the soft hair on his forehead, saying, "Approved." Leo's fingers brushed across Lucas's forehead, making it itchy and causing Lucas to squint his eyes. Then he heard Leo say, "Not only will I approve the sick leave, but I'll also seek justice for you." Later, Lucas learned that Carter was directly taken to the police station that night and became the main suspect in the kidnapping case. The next day, Carter's lawyer showed up and claimed that Carter's act was not kidnapping but merely restricting others' personal freedom. Moreover, it was for less than 24 hours and he didn't have direct contact with the victims. If there were any excessive actions, they were all done by his subordinates. Leo submitted the surveillance video from the restaurant to the police, including the conversation between Carter and his subordinates, as well as the physical examination results of Lucas and Nora. They had inhaled an excessive amount of anesthetic, which was a prohibited drug. Leo used all means to ensure that Carter was convicted of kidnapping. Such a scandal couldn't be hidden. The fact that the boss of blxin was taken to the police station immediately brought great panic to the company. Sitting on the hospital bed, Lucas watched Leo peel an apple for him with a very strange expression on his face. The slender fingers held the knife, and the apple peel smoothly fell from the gap between the knife and the pulp. The sight of the president peeling an apple was really terrifying. It was a bit hard to enjoy. He wanted to say several times that Leo was more virtuous than he had imagined, but he didn't dare to say it out loud. Lucas asked, "Mr. Leo, when can I be discharged from the hospital?" Nora next door has already gone home, but he is still in the hospital because Leo won't let him leave. He has no relatives in City S and didn't tell his parents who are far away in City C about this. Staying in the hospital is boring. Even more terrifying is that Leo comes to take care of him personally whenever he has time. He is not seriously ill and can run and jump. That little bit of medicine has already been metabolized, so he doesn't need to be taken care of at all. Carter hasn't come out yet. The matter of blxin will definitely affect Yaoi. Leo should be very busy now, but he comes to his hospital bed to peel an apple for him. Leo said, "Have a full body check again." They even found a mole in his armpit. Do they still need to check again? Lucas has no way to go against Leo, so he can only accept his fate. If you stay in the hospital for a long time, people will come to visit. Henry was among the first to come. He looked at Lucas with teary eyes and said sadly, "You've suffered, Secretary Lucas." Lucas smiled and said, "Don't make it sound like something bad has happened to me." He patted his chest, then looked at Leo beside him and said, "I'm so smart, and with the wise and valiant Mr. Leo, of course I'm safe and sound." Seeing that Lucas was in good spirits, Henry began to passionately scold Carter, "Old dog, how dare he touch someone from our Yaoi? He has no shame and no sense of self-preservation." He said to Lucas, "Don't worry, Mr. Leo will definitely crush him." Lucas isn't worried about this. From the very beginning, he knew that with Leo's vengeful personality, how could he tolerate Carter acting so arrogantly? It's just how to deal with the chairman. Now Carter is in the detention center, and there is turmoil within blxin. The group won't let blxin be leaderless. Speaking of which, this is half of the Chin family's family business. Lucas isn't good at directly consulting Leo and Henry, so he can only say, "I believe Mr. Leo will arrange it properly." Henry chatted with Lucas for a while and told Lucas to rest well. When Henry was about to leave, Leo called him to stop in the corridor. Leo said, "Get ready to take action." Henry exaggeratedly sighed and said, "Finally, it's time to take action. I've been waiting until my hair has turned white. This time, it just so happens to coincide with Secretary Lucas' matter. We can also claim just cause for our action." Leo looked at him and said, "I'd rather not have such a pretext. He'd rather act without a just cause and be called ruthless and heartless by outsiders than let Lucas go through such a thing." Henry said, "Of course. I'm just sighing. Carter just walked right into the trap. It's really self-inflicted doom." Henry went back and started making arrangements according to Leo's instructions. Soon, everyone found that the bad days of blxin seemed to have no end. Something even more terrible than General Manager Carter being taken to the police station happened. blxin broke out in a debt crisis. blxin had been in poor operating condition. It was only because the group occasionally provided relief and gave blxin the crucial charging technology that blxin made a profit from the speed car project. However, the project had a long construction period and slow capital return. blxin had a lot of external debts and it was difficult to turn losses into profits immediately. So before, Carter harassed Shearway every now and then, hoping to threaten Leo with the technology he held in his hand and get Leo to give him money. Now that Carter had caused such a scandal and was in detention, the group temporarily assigned a manager there to hold on. But at this time, blxin's creditors started to act. At the same time, they demanded that blxin repay its debts. In principle, according to the previously signed contracts, this was unreasonable. But each of blxin's projects had more or less quality and regulatory problems during this period. Coupled with Carter's incident, the creditors directly took legal action, suing blxin for breaching the contract, falsifying in the project, and the person in charge being morally corrupt. They not only demanded the settlement of the payment but also compensation for liquidated damages. blxin had no money. So in an instant, this enterprise that had been in operation for more than a decade was facing a broken capital chain, all projects being shut down, and was on the verge of bankruptcy. On Shearway's side, Leo used some means to protect the reputations of Lucas and Nora and didn't disclose the names of the two assistants to the outside world. Outsiders only knew that Carter had offended Leo because of two people on Leo's side and was thrown into the detention center. They didn't know who they were specifically or how the conviction was made. For the inside of the president's office, Leo hid most of the facts. He just said that he had a conflict with Carter at a banquet. Carter wanted to take away the two assistants, but their people found out in time and stopped him. Even if some people had doubts in their hearts with Nora's appearance, soon everyone believed the story Leo made up. Nora came to work at the company on the third day after the incident. She looked normal without any injuries or illnesses, just the same as usual. When someone asked her about the details of the incident, she calmly told the story and only gritted her teeth with hatred when mentioning Carter. It was consistent with the facts Leo publicized externally. Everyone asked her about Secretary Lucas again. Nora said, "Secretary Lucas asked me to come back to the company on my own initiative. He is cooperating with the police in the investigation." The other assistants all praised Lucas. "Secretary Lucas is very gentlemanly." "Well done," Nora said. "Moreover, he and Assistant Henry have other things to do. You'll know in a while." A few days later, blxin erupted into a debt crisis. Leo never concealed his methods. Soon, everyone knew that he was the one behind all this. The assistants in the president's office thought that Lucas and Henry had been carrying out a secret mission for the president together. Some people even thought that perhaps Mr. Leo had instructed Secretary Lucas to use a phishing law enforcement method when Carter got into trouble this time. With this move, Leo not only protected Lucas but also let others know that he was not someone to be trifled with. Some people said that Leo was being partial. Whoever touched his people, he would retaliate against. Others said that this was just a guise of Leo. How could he really bankrupt blxin just for two assistants? Some people also said that blxin and Shearway were both companies of the same group. They shared weal and woe. Leo was shooting himself in the foot by doing this. Only the people of the Chin family knew the inside story. Leo was furious for the sake of his sweetheart. Carter should have picked someone else to target. How dare he make a move on Lucas? Who is Lucas? He is not only Leo's secretary but also his underground lover. The two were in a passionate relationship. When Carter made a move on Lucas, Leo was not only extremely angry but also wanted Carter dead. Only the people of the Chin family knew how troublesome this matter was. Lucas was bored in the hospital. He didn't understand why Leo wouldn't let him be discharged. Isn't this a waste of medical resources? Leo said, it's a private hospital. We pay by the day. Lucas. All right, you're rich, so you're right. So Lucas simply regarded his hospital stay as a vacation and lay there playing games without a care in the world because Leo brought the portable game console from home for him to play. While Lucas was lying in bed playing games, Leo was peeling an apple for him beside the hospital bed. At first, Lucas still felt a bit guilty and was extremely cautious. He didn't dare to let Leo do things for him. But since Leo insisted repeatedly, Lucas had no choice. Gradually, he even began to get used to it. However, he got tired of eating apples. Lucas stared at the little figure on the screen and said, I don't want to eat apples anymore. Leo's hand that was peeling the apple paused and said, it helps supplement vitamins. Lucas turned over, facing Leo directly with his face, and his eyes still didn't move away from the game console screen. He said, but I really get tired of eating them every day. I don't want to eat them anymore. Leo glanced at him. Lucas was playing excitedly and didn't realize that his tone was soft and gentle. Lucas said, I want to eat watermelon. Leo rejected it, saying, watermelon is too cold. No. Lucas rolled on the hospital bed, put down the game console in his hand, and repeated in despair, I just want to eat watermelon. I'm about to get moldy. I need the coolness of watermelon to comfort me. Leo picked up a washed grape from the side and naturally stuffed it into his mouth. Lucas bit through the grape and the sweet juice burst on the tip of his tongue. He swallowed the pulp and said, grapes are barely acceptable, but it would be better if they were chilled. Leo looked down at him with his eyes downcast and reached out his hand to him. Lucas stared at Leo's slender fingers and blinked in confusion. Leo said, the skin. Lucas immediately came to his senses. How dare he spit the grape skin into the president's hand? He quickly got up from the bed and said, I've already eaten it all together. He looked at Leo, sighed, and said, Mr. Leo, if this goes on, I'll be spoiled by you. He knew that Leo felt guilty towards him, thinking that if it weren't for him, Lucas wouldn't have encountered such a thing. But it wasn't Leo's fault. Besides, he was fine now and everything was over. These days, Leo had been very silent. When in the ward, he didn't talk much to him. He just silently accompanied him for meals and prepared fruits for him. When Lucas was having a check-up, as long as Leo wasn't busy with company affairs, he basically accompanied him. He repeatedly confirmed that there was no residual anesthetic in Lucas's body before he felt relieved. Lucas looked at Leo with gentle eyes and said, Mr. Leo, I'm fine, really? Don't worry. Leo hung his eyes and stared at Lucas, asking, were you scared at that time? Lucas knew the president was asking about that night. He smiled and said, it's false to say I wasn't scared, but I wasn't that scared either. The corners of his mouth lifted slightly and there was a glint in his eyes. Recalling the situation at that time, he felt a sense of emotion and gratitude, but no trace of after fear. I thought at that time that at worst, it would be a fight to the bitter end. In a society ruled by law, would he really dare to kill me? Hearing Lucas' words, Leo frowned. Lucas continued, moreover, I believed you would come to rescue me soon. He gave Leo a big smile. I sent a message to the bodyguards. When they arrived at the parking lot, they would notice something was wrong and soon report it to you. Who are you? You're the wise and valiant president. You would definitely find a way to rescue me. I wasn't scared at all. Just now he said it was false to say he wasn't scared, but now he said he wasn't scared at all. Lucas smiled with his eyes bent, trying hard to convey a message to Leo that he was really okay and had no psychological trauma. Besides, Leo did it. When he was leaning against the outer wall, the first time he heard someone approaching the window, it should have been Carter, and the second time someone approached was soon after. The two times were only separated by such a short period, which meant Leo had rushed there at the fastest speed. Even if Lucas hadn't climbed the wall, according to that time difference, Carter wouldn't have been able to do anything to him. Lucas expected Leo to be very quick, but he didn't expect him to be that fast. He asked, Mr. Leo, how did you come so quickly? Leo said, I've been keeping an eye on Carter. I know all his industries and all his channels in this city. One could say that as soon as Carter lifted his butt, Leo knew what he was going to do. Lucas clapped his hands admiringly and said, I knew it. You're the most amazing, Mr. Leo. Leo looked at Lucas. Lucas' eyes were full of admiration and trust. In his heart, the president was really like Superman, omnipotent and able to handle any situation. Leo reached out his hand, brushed the stray hairs in front of his forehead, and his fingers slid down his forehead and gently touched his face, saying, "You really almost died. Do you know that? What did the seventh floor mean? As long as he took a wrong step, he would fall." And at that time, Lucas had taken drugs. How he managed to do all that, Leo still didn't dare to think about it in detail. Lucas smiled sheepishly and said it was an emergency at that time. "If you asked me to do it now, I wouldn't dare." Leo said, "Don't ever take your own life lightly again." The typical domineering president style order appeared again. Just as he did in the past, Lucas readily agreed, "Okay, Mr. Leo. I'll listen to you." Lucas remembered Leo's trembling at that time. The president was really afraid that he would fall and was really worried about him. "Next time I'll pay attention to safety, be more cautious, and handle problems in a more reliable way. I won't be so reckless like this time." He looked at Leo tenderly and said in a soft tone, "So don't be angry." Leo said, "I'm not angry." He assured Lucas there won't be a next time. He wouldn't let Lucas be in such a dangerous situation again. Leo tapped Lucas's cheek with his finger. The president often did this action recently. Lucas would always feel a bit itchy and said, "Mr. Leo, do you still feel uncomfortable when contacting me now?" Leo shook his head. Lucas thought so too. That day Leo held him tightly in his arms. It didn't seem like he was very repulsive. Lucas was relieved. The president finally accepted him psychologically and regarded him as one of his own. Lucas also interpreted that hug as an emotional outburst in an emergency. Lucas still remembered the feeling of Leo's hand around his waist, strong and full of power, which made his face flush and his heart race. This must be the legendary hero complex, the suspension bridge effect. Lucas regained his composure. Today was the first time they talked about that incident face to face. The atmosphere was just right, and he should take the opportunity to clear things up. Lucas quickly said, "Mr. Leo, thank you." Leo pursed his lips, his eyes flickering, and said, "You don't need to." He wanted to say something more, but was interrupted by Lucas. "Of course I need to. Otherwise, I can't let you peel apples for me with a clear conscience." Lucas winked playfully. This is an unprecedented treatment. Leo was stunned for a moment, bent his finger, and flicked Lucas's forehead. Lucas covered his forehead and sighed inwardly. Compared with touching his face, it was better to be flicked on the forehead. At least his face wouldn't get hot. The two of them chatted casually. Finally, the atmosphere was a bit back to what it was before the accident. Lucas took the opportunity to make a request. "Mr. Leo, I want to work. Let me go back to the company." Leo looked at him and said, "Don't you usually complain that I oppress you? Now I'm giving you paid leave. What else are you not satisfied with? But it's not a good thing to stay in the hospital all the time." Lucas didn't expect that he would feel anxious because of not going to work. "I miss the company and my colleagues. Let me be discharged from the hospital." Leo rejected it. "You still have to stay here for a few days." Lucas was puzzled. Why on earth? Leo paused. Just when Lucas thought he wouldn't explain, he said, "The group is putting pressure on me because of Carter's matter. The matter of blchina has been reported." Even though Leo has never said it directly, Lucas probably knows the situation. This time Carter is suspected of kidnapping, which just gives them a reason. Leo can crush blchina once and for all. Lucas asked, "Mr. Leo, do you really want to make blchina go bankrupt? Anyway, it's a brother company. Carter must pay the price, but the company is innocent. There are so many employees and projects in blchina. Once it goes bankrupt, the losses will be immeasurable. The group should be considering this, so they keep sending people to lobby Leo, hoping that Leo can spare blchina." Leo didn't answer this question, but said they hope that Carter will continue to be the general manager of blchina. The group's excuse is that Mr. Carter has been in blchina for so many years, he has a way of managing the company, and the employees of blchina all listen to him. Only Carter can get blchina out of the predicament. After hearing this, Lucas thought it was incredible. blchina obviously started to decline in Mr. Carter's hands. That person is a criminal. The group. Why does the chairman still want to use him? Don't call him Mr. Carter. This title flatters him. Leo said the relationship between Carter and the chairman is very complicated. Carter knows a lot of secrets about Alexander's rise. If Alexander doesn't protect him, maybe those secrets will be exposed one day. But you can't cover him up like this. They even want him to return to the company. How wishful thinking. Lucas was indignant. The chairman must have used many means to force Leo. Leo often disappeared these days. He should have gone to the group. The chairman treats his non-blood brother better than his son. If Leo didn't look a bit like Alexander, Lucas would have thought Leo wasn't his own son. Hearing Lucas stand up for him, Leo looked calm and said, I will definitely send him to jail. It doesn't matter who comes, he will keep Carter in jail. As for blxin, I have my own arrangements. He is still so overbearing and autocratic. Lucas felt sorry for Leo and pitied him. He sat on the edge of the bed, picked up the fruit plate on the bedside table, and held it in front of Leo, saying, Mr. Leo, don't be angry. Have some fruit. Leo looked deeply at him and said, I fed you directly into your mouth before, and now you're just holding a plate in front of me half-heartedly? Lucas had no choice but to pick a grape from the bunch and put it to Leo's lips, saying, the one at the tip of the bunch is the sweetest. Try it. Leo stared at Lucas and opened his mouth. This meant he wanted to be fed. Lucas remembered when Leo fed him earlier, Leo's fingertips were less than an inch from his lips. He felt a bit hot. He pinched the round grape and brought it to Leo's lips. Leo had well-shaped lips, but they were a bit thin, sometimes looking a bit cold and heartless. Just as the grape was about to touch his lips, there was a sudden knock on the door outside the ward. The two people in the room were both stunned at the same time. After a while, when no one inside answered, the person outside voluntarily said, Leo, I'm here to see Secretary Lucas. It was actually Ms. Elena. Lucas dropped the grape in his hand, quickly put the fruit plate back on the bedside table, and then lay down on the hospital bed. He completed a series of actions in one go, which only took a few seconds. Leo. The grape that was about to be eaten flew away. Hearing Ms. Elena's voice, Lucas instantly understood why Leo didn't let him leave the hospital. Because the group was persuading Leo to show mercy, but Leo naturally wouldn't listen. The Chin family could only try to find another way. Wasn't Lucas lying in the hospital bed the best entry point? Lucas lay down properly, looked at Leo, and used his eyes to reassure the president that he would definitely act well. Now that the company's situation is so complicated, Leo knew that Alexander would have designs on Lucas, so he wanted to keep him in a place within his reach for safety. He just didn't expect that Alexander still refused to show up in person, but sent Elena instead. Leo stood up and opened the ward door. Elena was holding a gift box in her hand. Looking at her son, she asked, Is Lucas okay? Leo stepped aside. Elena walked in and saw Lucas lying in bed, showing a worried look. She walked to Lucas's hospital bed, put down the gift box, stared at Lucas with her eyes full of worry, and there were even faint tears glistening. Ms. Elena was heartbroken and shed tears. Lucas, you've suffered. Lucas weakly raised his eyes. His face was pale and haggard. His usually lively eyes had lost their luster, and there was an air of illness around him. It seemed that a gust of wind could blow him away. He said, Madam, I'm fine. I'm so happy that you came to see me. He gasped for breath after saying a few words. His breathing was difficult. If someone didn't know, they would think he had pulmonary disease. Not bad, little secretary. You can even compete with the movie queen in acting.